Gnosia released without much fanfare after its initial localization announcement in December. Despite coming out in Japan 2 years ago, no one seemed to know anything about it, but I'm happy to report that this is a fantastic read for visual novel fans and one of the Switch's sleeper hits of 2021. Any coverage this game received was quick to notice the basic Among Us similarities coming from the game's premise, being that 15 people are trapped in a spaceship with some of them being destructive aliens known as Gnosia in disguise. A more apt comparison, however, would be with something like Town of Salem or Werewolf, which we've seen replicated in a visual novel before, The Raging Loop, so if you've played either of these you'll have a pretty good idea of what you're in for. At its core, this is a social deduction game where you vote on someone to be sent to cold sleep once per day, with you and your fellow crewmates taking on a variety of roles to help deduce who's infected. You get engineers that can scan people at night and find out if they're human, guardian angels that can protect one person from attack, and a whole host of others that slowly unlock throughout the game. For plot reasons unknown to you at the beginning, you're stuck repeating this scenario over and over, giving us a literal gameplay loop in this instance, and it's up to the player to get to know everyone travelling aboard with you and get one step closer to the truth of this bizarre situation. When I first bought this, I was worried that it was going to be a pretty repetitive experience I'd get bored of fast, though the game manages to add some longevity to this formula through its inclusions of stats to help you steer conversations in your preferred direction. Your characters assigned values for charisma, charm, logic, and a range of other personality traits that can be leveled up to increase your chances of surviving, so as you get stronger you feel like you're always achieving something with your loop. You also unlock special commands that can only be used by having high stats and specific abilities, such as being able to define someone as an enemy or human with high logic, so as you keep playing you'll have more strategies available to you, culminating into a surprisingly robust experience. For the first 30 or so loops, these new mechanics are steadily introduced to you at a good pace, and for the most part the content in this game has been padded out well throughout its 15-hour playtime. You're not the only one to have these abilities assigned to you, however, as if you look at your crew data you'll be able to see the stats of everyone else. This is very helpful for developing strategies early on and you don't have much info to go off of in discussions, as you may just decide to take someone out with high charisma just to be safe. Most importantly, however, you begin to see your crewmates as actual people with their own complex set of emotions, with some being highly logical or just being there to fuck everyone over. Similarly, after discussions you frequently get the option to interact with your crewmates in special events, giving us some backstory info if they're under specific conditions or showcasing dynamics they have with each other. Some characters are admittedly lacking in depth in comparison to others, but overall there's a lot to unpack here, and all the different interactions do a good job of selling these crewmates as being layered, complex individuals as you gain a good idea of their likes and dislikes. These events also end up helping us in discussions as we know more about everyone and find it easier to predict their actions, so you'll be spending a good amount of time trying to completely figure out everyone's personality. This is where a lot of the game's appeal comes from, as the majority of the cast are instantly intriguing thanks to their distinct designs. Overall, the game nails its atmosphere with these characters being brought to life with a sketchy look and a vibrant use of colour. The art style's been one of the biggest talking points prior to release and it's easy to see why, and I spent a lot of time hiding the UI and simply taking in the new art the game was showing to me during my playthrough. The music's no slouch either, giving the game a dreamlike quality as you hear its trance tracks playing throughout. When there's so little input from the player in these types of games, the presentation needs to be top notch, and Gnosia knocks it out of the park. The only thing that's slightly off-putting at the beginning in this regard is the lack of voice acting, but considering the amount of repeated dialogue, hearing everything voiced would have gotten really tedious fast, so by the end I was glad this was missing. As far as criticisms go, I honestly don't have that many. I struggle to be too harsh on this game when the premise is pulled off so well and the game is only being sold for 20 quid. I'd say that the plot itself can be somewhat underwhelming. There's some pretty neat twists with some satisfying reveals, but overall I wouldn't expect some deeply emotional story, and it's not the kind of plot you'll be thinking back on for years to come. If it doesn't connect with you, then luckily you have the fantastic characters to interact with, so either way you'll manage to enjoy some aspect of the narrative. My second and final big criticism would be that some of the character events I mentioned earlier are completely optional, and you'll most likely miss them during your first playthrough. Part of me thinks it's neat to have these completely random encounters that a friend might never see, but at the same time there's a noticeable lack of new content during the endgame, and making a few of these events mandatory would have made some later loops more engaging. Overall, I'm very happy with this game. If you like your text-heavy adventures, this will be right up your alley, and for murder mystery fans that have played the likes of Danganronpa and Zero Escape, this is straight up an essential purchase. The concept's pulled off extremely well, the game doesn't overstay its welcome, and it's priced accordingly. Really not much to complain about here, and all in all it's a really solid visual novel that may very well end up being one of your favourites. Thanks for watching, and a special shout out to Pharaoh2091, as he's let me use his footage of this game for this video.